Now that we have the drinks section created and the news section created and our singles section created, I want to jump in and get a little bit more specific with the content. If we look at our static templates again, under favorite drinks on the home page, you can see we have an image associated with each drink. And it's there on the home page, it's up here in this header here, and there's also an image in the content as well. In order to store images alongside an entry in Craft, like for drinks, we need to create an image field, or in Craft, we call it assets. And assets are set up in a few different steps. First, we have to create the assets volume. Then we have to add a field, an asset field, to a publish layout pointing at a volume, and then someone can upload to those. So the goal here is to be able to specify an image for each drinks entry, but not use the same exact image version for the home page as we do for the entry page. So here, like for up here and for here, I want that to be different than the one for here because I want this one to be a different size and different treatment because of its location. So to handle these images, let's talk about how we can implement assets. First, a little bit about assets in Craft, just so we're all on the same page. You can think of assets as a way of managing files using the Assets Manager. And it's like a file manager if that's something that you've had in other content management systems you've used. The assets that are stored along with an entry only stores a reference to that file on disk. It doesn't actually store the image with the entry itself. And it's really easy to access those images and call them in the templates and display them as images, or it doesn't have to be an image. It could also be a PDF file. It could be an HTML file. It could be an image file. There could be all sorts of different file types, as we'll see in a few minutes. Now, asset volumes are how we organize assets. So there's a few different ways of storing assets in volumes. There's a local, which is stored right on the disk of the web server where you're serving up your website. But because we like to be as distributed as possible when we're creating Craft sites, the preferred way to go is remote, which means that you're storing in a supported third-party cloud service like AWS S3, Google Cloud, Rackspace Cloud, DigitalOcean Spaces, and Fort Rabbit Object Storage. Now, there are plugins for all of these, including first-party plugins from Pixel and Tonic for the big ones like AWS 3, Google Cloud, and Rackspace Cloud. And you should be able to find these plugins in the Craft plugin store. Now, while remote is my preferred way to go, for this course, we're just going to do local. We're just going to keep it simple and just store the images locally. So clicking on Perfect Espresso again, we're going to have one image that's going to be used up here and on the home page. We're going to upload these images to a volume and just have them resized based on usage. So let's create the assets. So if we're in the Craft control panel, we'll go to Settings, and this is where we configure our site always under Settings. And we're going to go to the Assets section under Content. And you can see we have some settings on the left: volumes, image transforms, and settings. So volumes is where we create and manage our volumes. Image transforms is where we create and manage the transforms. And settings are just some things for temporary uploads, where to store them. Of course, that becomes more useful once we have volumes. So let's start there. We'll create a new volume. Think of a volume as a storage location. So we'll give it a name. In this case, we'll call it drinks. One thing that I like to do is match volumes and sections and layouts, all that stuff, so it's similarly named or the same name as the section of content. So we want these assets in this volume to have public URLs because I want to call them and view them in a publicly available page in the browser. The base URL is how we get to the assets in the volume, and for that we'll use @web, and then I can tack on things like assets or images, uploads, drinks, something like that. And then the volume type is going to be the local folder. And then the path is going to be web root / images, uploads, drinks. So the base URL is how the browser is going to call those images to be viewed. And this is what the assets volume will use to allow uploads to it. Now I'm using a combination of an alias @web and @webroot. So this is an alias to the web page URL, the base URL, and this is a alias to the base web root in my file system. I'm doing that just as a shortcut. So let's click save. And now we have it all set. So I need to create those locations in my project now. So in my project, I'm going to go to the web directory. I already have images. Inside of there, I already have uploads, and I already have drinks. And I've mapped this to that. If you don't have that yet, you'll want to create it. Craft will not create the directories that you set in the asset volume settings. You have to do that yourself. So now if I go to assets in the left side here, because once I defined an asset volume, it's going to have the assets. And you can see there's the drinks volume. I can upload a file. So if I go to Crafty Coffee static, to my images, drinks, let's upload espresso. There it is uploading, and it worked. If you get any type of error, it will mean that your upload file location, your file location on disk locally here, is not correct. If it uploaded without a problem, then your assets volume is set up properly. So now we are ready to create a field because it's fine and good just to upload the images here, but I need to assign or associate an asset or an image to an actual drink entry. So we'll go back into settings and we're going to create a new field that is the type of assets. So we'll go into fields and drinks, add a new field. And for this one, we'll call it drink image. Now here's an opportunity to think if you were going to reuse this image elsewhere and if all of the rules about the image will apply. So I'm going to choose the field type of assets. And now I'm going to choose the sources. So this is where I would think, okay, like I only want to be able to upload to the drinks asset source. That means that this field needs to be specific to drinks. It can't just be a generic image field. It could be, but I would have to allow it to upload to all sources, which would then kind of mix and match where the images could be uploaded. By doing it this way, I'm kind of putting some guardrails along the editorial workflow to prevent people from mixing images in the wrong volumes. So we're just going to say drinks is the source. This is the default upload location. This is good. Whether we can show unpermitted volumes, we'll say no. Show permitted files or unpermitted files, we're going to say no. Restrict allowed file types. So here we'll choose image is all we want. The number of selectable assets will be 1. And the view mode, list, or large thumbnails. I guess we'll go with large thumbnails. We'll say for the label, add a drink image. All right, so that's all there is for creating the field. It's just a field with the type assets. And then when we choose that, we can choose the source. In this case, it's the drinks volume that we just created. And we save it. And now, like we did before, we have to go into our drinks section entry type and then add the image to it and save that. And now when I go back into a drink entry, you can see now I have this image option here. I can choose espresso shot and save it. And now I've associated that image with the entry. If I wanted to, I can customize the layout of this table and include the image as well if I wanted to have a visual of the drink. So now we've created not only the assets volume, but also a field associated with that volume, added it to the field layout for our drink section, and then added an image to the entry, and then made it display on the entry listing page right here. Looking back at our static templates, I see that here, this is a resized version of the image. And I don't want to just pull in the full image and then crop it on the fly with styles, because that's going to be a waste of resources. There's no reason to download an entire image just for this small thing. I want to create a thumbnail and have Craft generate that for me. To do that, we use what are called transforms. So if we go back into our control panel, go to Settings, Assets, and instead of volumes, we'll choose Image Transforms, and we'll create a new image transform. The image transform is what allows us to set the rules for how images are going to be cropped or stretched or resized to fit our content needs. So this one I know is going to be 840 by 200 thumb, and we'll just call it 840 200 thumb like that. The mode is crop, which means I want to crop the image. For the default focal point, center is fine. That's going to be how it crops, basically by the center, so it's going to do a center crop. The width is going to be 840 by 200. And I know this because I know what this needs to be right here. And I'm basically creating the crop for this, because what we're going to do is we're going to upload the biggest size image we have and then crop down, because you can never make the images bigger, right? You'll get a loss of quality. They'll be pixelated. So we upload the biggest image we have, and then we create transforms to make those smaller or resize them. Quality we'll leave as auto, interlacing none. Image format we'll leave as auto as well, depending on the image that we upload. So it's called 840 by 200 thumb, and then the handle is 840 200 thumb. Mode is crop. Center focal point, 840 by 200 is the actual width and height that will be cropped to. And then everything else is set to the defaults to auto. So let's save that. It says 840 200 isn't a valid handle. Looks like it used to be. So we'll just do 840 200 thumb like that. There we are. That's what we'll need in our template to call that asset transform. And this is going to get triggered when we call it the first time from a template. It'll actually load it. And then let me go ahead and add a new entry. We'll actually upload a new file here, espresso shot. Let's do iced coffee. There we go. Now we got that. I can click on it and see it right here. And now I can create a new entry for iced coffee. Just put in some placeholder. We'll add the image of iced coffee and save it. So now when we call this image or any of these images in our templates and we call a transform along with it, Craft will generate that transform on demand and then store it for subsequent calls.